So on Sunday, the Jacksonville Jaguars went to Indianapolis and were able to defeat the Colts 31-21. But the game felt closer than 10 points. And really, for most of the game, it was a one-score game. The Jaguars led most of the way. Obviously, they had a late mistake where Trevor Lawrence fumbled the ball. Tank Bigsby picks it up, doesn't realize the play is still going, has the ball knocked out of his hands. Colts pick it up, run it back for a touchdown, and then the Colts lead. And it wasn't looking great at that point. Fortunately, the Jaguars were able to get a big punt return from Jamal Agnew that put them in range to start working down on a short field. They were able to get a touchdown to take the lead, intercepted Anthony Richardson, and then punched in another touchdown. All that happened in, I believe, 1 minute, 6 seconds to put the game at 10 points to the Jaguars' favor. The Colts were not able to score again. Jaguars snuck out of town with a win, which is obviously the biggest thing. But as I watched that game, and especially knowing the end result, it reminded me a lot of the Tennessee Titans game in the de facto AFC South championship game. There's a lot of similarities there. In both games, the defense sort of kept the Jaguars around, though admittedly, in both games, those quarterbacks the Jaguars were playing against, Anthony Richardson, who just doesn't have much starting experience, both at the collegiate level and obviously this being his first start at the NFL level, and then Josh Dobbs for the Titans, not exactly a starter on a weekly basis for NFL squads. So the Jaguars did have some help in that they were facing offenses that were trying to find their way. But in both of these games, the Jaguars' offense was sort of hit or miss. Sometimes it looked like they would be getting into rhythm, they'd be back out of rhythm, there were mistakes being made, throws being missed a little bit, more so in the Titans game than the Colts game, and ultimately it was a big play late that was able to catapult the Jaguars past each of these teams. Against the Colts, it was that Jamal Agnew return that puts them in range to get a touchdown, and then the rest is history. So in both games, the Jaguars struggled to find their footing, but in both games, they eventually got it done, which is the biggest thing. So the big question coming out of this game, I think, from a lot of Jaguars fans is going to basically be, should we be concerned? And to that, I would say the answer is probably no. Keep in mind, coming out of the preseason, a lot of years, you'll have a couple few teams in the NFL that jump out to 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 starts, 4-1 starts, good starts. But then they fall flat. They start sort of losing their way. There's always those surprises of teams that do really well early in the season, and it also goes the opposite direction. There's always a couple few teams that stumble out of the gate and then very quickly find their footing, and they're just fine. And I really think the Jaguars probably would fall closer to that camp where they have high expectations, sure, but they also didn't play much in the preseason. Like, the Jaguars actually played some of their starters a little bit more than other teams did in the preseason, particularly teams that knew exactly who was going to be their starting offense, starting defense. The Jaguars may have played their starters a little bit more than maybe the Bengals, the Bills, some of those top-tier teams, but there was no full games there. It's likely there's some rust. And I think the Jaguars, as they start playing full-speed games together, I would look for that offense to get more in sync, more in rhythm. Obviously, that offensive line is going to continue to gel together a little bit. Most offensive lines do. That defense hopefully continues to develop. There were some positive signs in the pass rush front, but definitely some things to work on in the defense. So I don't think there's any major cause for concern. Now, here's the good news. Going into this season, I was sort of eyeing these first 4 games as like, the Jaguars' schedule is fairly favorable compared to the other division winners in the AFC. If they could jump out to a 2-2 or a 3-1 start, they're really well set up to be just sort of doing what they should be doing to win the division. Now with the 1-0 start, they have the Chiefs coming up, obviously an extremely difficult game. Let's pretend for a moment that they just lose that, and, in all likelihood, I would probably say the Chiefs are going to win. So let's say they lose that game, 1-1. Then they have the Texans, then they have the Falcons. So in their first 4 games now, they knocked off the Colts, which I was a little bit nervous about the Colts game just because Anthony Richardson is just such an unknown. But now they have a pretty favorable schedule for the next few games, discounting the Chiefs game, because ultimately, if they lose that, they're expected to lose. But if they're able to win that game, there's a pretty clear path ahead that the Jaguars could sit at least 3-1, if not 4-0. So, yes, I would like to see the Jaguars clean things up, but keep in mind, a lot went wrong against the Colts, and they were still able to win by 10. So I'm not really concerned. I'm a little concerned about the mistakes, but early season, hopefully those get ironed out quickly. Nothing long-term, in my eyes, to be concerned about. So moving forward, I'm happy they got the win, and it's on to the Chiefs game, which is one of the big early season games I think all the Jaguars fans have circled on their calendars. So we'll see where that goes. I, of course, am curious about all of your thoughts. Let me know in those comments down below. Like, share, subscribe, and I will see all of you in the next video.